Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to our show. We have a special guest this week. We have Patrick from the Puck Guys podcast. You can check him out on thepuckguys.com. Also a Ducks fan as well. And thanks for coming on the show, Patrick.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's great. I'm excited to do this today.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to talk about an exciting week. The Ducks winning 4 games this week, 11 in a row now, beating the Kings twice this past week, Eddie. And, I mean, you just can't be more excited. You go on the franchise winning streak, and you knock out the Kings for first place in the Pacific.
Well, I mean, it's been a while since we've done a podcast. I mean, because we had the trade deadline show, and we were saying leading up to the first game against the Kings, they could go into this first game against LA and be on a 7-game winning streak, and obviously they win that. They continue on. We don't get to go on and discuss all the games that happen, and now we come out of this on an 11-game winning streak, and you got another hard game coming up, but you can't help but not be excited. I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to be in this position. I mean, we all hoped they'd be in the playoffs, but to be 2 points in front of LA and they don't have any games in hand or anything, you're in sole position of that Pacific Division lead. It's just amazing to see where they are right now.
Yeah, and speaking of the Pacific too, the Ducks could still take over the Western Conference. There's still a chance. They've got some games in hand, Patrick. So there's a lot more at stake now for Anaheim.
Yeah, they're on quite a tear. I mean, I was just looking at the notes today to see how crazy it is because, I mean, as you guys know, first few months of this season, it was hard to be a Ducks fan.
Yes.
It was tough sledding, but, I mean, they've gone 25-4-2 in their past 31 games. It's just been quite the ride out of Christmas breaks. But I think the pivotal game for Anaheim coming up is tomorrow. I mean, we'll see how they handle the Washington Capitals. I mean, they've been the darlings of the NHL this season. They're the best team in the East. And the Ducks have struggled somewhat against Eastern Conference teams, so I would like to see how they do against Ovi.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is going to be another huge test. I mean, every night's a test, but I mean, you play LA twice in the last 2 weeks. You squeak by Montreal. You have a physical battle with Arizona. Now you go into the high-scoring Capitals, who basically, I mean, they've played well the entire season, Eddie. I mean, this is going to be a test, and of course, we're going to have to play them, the very final game of the season due to all the weather and the game that was canceled earlier. So this should be a fun one tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, the Capitals have been good for a long time, and even going back to when Boudreau was there, and they're making it close to the Stanley Cup Finals. They just couldn't get there, and I think the only issue for them leading up to this season was they didn't have a number one elite goaltender, and I mean, there's always questions if Holtby was going to be that guy who would jump into the role, and I think there's no question this year that he's probably the best goalie this season, and it's shown. I mean, they've always scored goals. Bringing in Holtby, shoring up that defense. Niskanen and Orpik have stepped up this season. John Carlson has been amazing for them, and yeah, I mean, a lot of people handing Chicago the cup after that Ladd trade. Are kind of forgetting, the role that Washington's been all season. I mean, they've just been so consistent.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they've been on fire. I haven't seen any problems with that team, so it's going to be an interesting one. And like you said, it's big for Boudreau too. He's got 199 wins now as an Anaheim Ducks coach. He's going for his 200th tomorrow against his old team, Patrick. I mean, that there's going to be some extra motivation for this game.
Oh, he's got to have that going for him. He's going to get number 200 tomorrow. He just hit 400. He was not the fastest coach, but he's not the youngest, but the fastest to 400. And he did it in only 663 games. So it's a big day for Brucey, and let's hope he has the guys running for him tomorrow.
Yeah, and what a turnaround too. I mean, you saw a lot of people in the beginning of the season, heavily critical of Murray and keeping Boudreau. And I mean, you got to give Murray some credit, Eddie. He sticks with Boudreau. He turns his team around. Obviously, some moves that we'll talk about, too, with some of the players. But, I mean, that's pretty ballsy by Murray. And, he came through on the trade deadline again, too, as well.
Yeah, and this is what we talked about too at the early part of the season when a lot of people are calling for Bruce Boudreau to be fired, and really though, who is going to replace him? I mean, who out there is better? Even with the struggles in the beginning of the season. He is now the fastest coach to 400 wins. He has the highest points percentage of any coach all time. To play more than 300 games, he's sitting just above Scotty Bowman, which I mean, he still has a lot of games that catch him, but I mean, to sit anywhere close to him is just amazing, and yeah, like you said, it shows the faith that Bob Murray has in his coach, and it really lit a fire under the players, saying, I mean, this is the guy you're gonna have to play for. It's all on you guys, and play for him.
What did you guys think of all the stuff out there about get Randy Carlyle back? When you mentioned there a minute ago about the firing of Bruce Boudreau, I mean, how much of a laugh did you guys have when media was actually saying, are they going to bring Carlyle back to coach the Ducks?
Yeah, Eddie and I talked about this, and I think we shot that one down in about 2.5 seconds. Going back, people forget that when Carlyle was there, Getzlaf and Perry did not get along with him. So, I mean, why would you bring back another coach that doesn't get along with your two all-stars? And Eddie can piggyback on that. I mean, we both said resoundingly no.
Yeah, I think I've seen enough of him here too. Obviously, we saw him in Anaheim, but then seeing him in Toronto and how he kind of handled the situation there and how it all went with the Leafs, it wasn't a pretty situation. And just imagining the fact that he might be back in Anaheim was scary enough.
Everyone seems to love him because he has that cup, but people tend to forget that Chris Pronger and Scott Niedermayer are also on that team.
Yeah, there were a lot of different reasons why we won. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still thankful that we won and he was the coach. But, just how it is as time goes on. Sometimes players change and the way that the relationships with the coaches go, it just didn't work out. So I'm glad that Murray stuck with Boudreau. And I like some of the moves that he did, too, on this trade deadline. I know, Patrick, we talked about this before the show. This was a little bit before the trade deadline. But how much do you love David Perron?
It's that instant chemistry he's had with Ryan Getzlaf that's pretty much made the difference for me. I mean, how many games has it been, guys, that Bruce has been able to split up Perry and Getzlaf and be able to rely on them? I mean, of course, they play out together on occasion, but having David Perron, he gets in, especially quick space, and they showed some highlights of that yesterday, and then they also had those when he was with the Blues. He's got a history, so it's a perfect fit in Anaheim. He plays the style, goes to the front of the net, he gets some goals, but that chemistry with what was, for me, is what really matters the most to the Ducks.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about a guy that's been rolling. He's played 21 games with the Ducks this season, Eddie, and he's got 18 points, 8 goals, and 10 assists. I mean, I'm speechless. I mean, we knew that he could do well and play and go towards the net, but I mean, this has got to be, a far exceeding expectations.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the center he plays, I believe when he was in St. Louis, he would have had the chance to play with David Backes, and he plays a similar type of game to Ryan Getzlaf. He slows the play down, he's physical, he can make a pass, and that's what suits him. I mean, you see him go to Pittsburgh, and he has to play with Malkin, and he has to play with Crosby. And, those guys are explosive skaters. They get up the rink fast. They don't forecheck as much as a guy like Getzlaf would, and it helps his play. I mean, it's been an amazing start for him. He'd be a guy you would expect that they would be, pushing hard to re-sign at the end of the season, and he's definitely earned that.
I agree, and they also brought in McGinn, and McGinn got 2 goals in his first 2 games, Patrick. So I'm sitting there going, "Holy crap, Murray! Like, you got a crystal ball, or what are you doing when you're picking these guys?" It's like he knows.
It's great. I mean, that was awesome for Jimmy McGinn to come over to Anaheim and be able to produce right away. I'm sure that's huge for him. It's just been a great turnaround on this season, and he just adds to it. I mean, I know we lost Patty Maroon there. And McGinn's able to slot right in and take over that role. So it's just been really good for the Ducks moving forward with him. You just hope this continues here as we roll into the playoffs.
This kind of brings us to one fan question too. We had Alex was asking us about the fourth line on the team, because if you look at the team right now, they've been playing with everybody. They had Richie up, and they've been rolling. But we're going to get a lot of players back. We have Horkoff that's going to come back. Paris should be ready pretty soon. See how he's going to do. And I mean, we're going to have to put all these players back in the lineup and try and figure it out. So one question we have is about the fourth line, Eddie. Kind of how you see maybe that going. I mean, it seems like the other 3 lines are pretty consistent. Maybe Richie goes down, but what do you think?
Yeah, you would expect when a guy like Peary comes in, he'd get a shot to play in a top 6 role, and maybe that moves down Santarelli. I believe they think they could, put a little bit more skill on that top line with Getzlaf and Prawn. Not that Santarelli hasn't done well. I mean, he's done extremely well for him up on that top line, but it gives you a little more flexibility. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs last year, and being able to scratch guys, and put in maybe some faster guys like Peary or Santarelli, or if you want to be tougher, you put in Thompson or Horkoff or Garbett, and it gives you, if we didn't already be able to match up against a lot of teams, now you have throughout the whole line to be able to match up against more teams in a more efficient way.
Yeah, and I mean, look at the depth, Patrick, going into the playoffs now. Once these guys come back, you get Horkoff back from the suspension, Hurry back from the injury. You also have Stewart, too, that's out there. I mean, this is a team that's going to have plenty of options on their forward lines.
Yeah, I'm really interested, too, to see where Peary's going to fit in all this. It'll be great to have Stewie back. He has that level of toughness, and he's got hands for a big guy, too. But I'm really curious to see how Peary's going to sit in on that, because a lot of people compare him to a Carl Hagelin with that kind of speed and skill, and he didn't really necessarily work out here. But, the 6th round pick, option for Murray on that was a great move. So it was worth the risk. And how do you guys feel he's going to slot in there? I know you said a little bit on the offensive side, but do you think he's kind of got his same game as a Hagelin, or do you think he provides a little more for the Ducks?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is more like a Hagelin type thing. But then again, we also had Sekach, and Sekach didn't work out either. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting if they do try to put him, maybe up on another line, like pull Richie off and move him on one of those lines. But I don't know. He may go back down towards more of a 4th line role. What do you think, Eddie?
I kind of compare him a little bit. I mean, I don't want to get carried away, but to how Silfverberg plays. I mean, I haven't seen him with like how good he is with the back check. I know they put him in a checking role for most of the season this year, but he has a really good shot. He did, he scored 22 goals last year for Florida. Had a Cy Young type of year with 22 goals and 2 assists. So, I mean, he can definitely shoot the puck. He had a couple opportunities with Yager and Barkov this year, and I think he could benefit from playing with Getzlaf and Perron. Be, like you said, maybe that type of haggling guy who has a little bit of speed and skill to the line. But I think he can definitely shoot the puck a little bit better, and maybe he'll have a similar impact to how Silfverberg does.
Yeah, and another fan question that kind of ties into all this. We're talking about all the players coming back and going towards the playoffs. We have Michael that asks about the playoffs, and how do you think the Ducks will do in the playoffs, trying to go towards a Stanley Cup? And what are your thoughts, Patrick? Each year we've gone up. We went the first round, the second round, Western Conference Final. Obviously coming up a game short. What's your take on the playoffs as the Ducks are going down the final stretch of the season?
I mean, I think it's obviously it's a 2-team race out of the Pacific between the Ducks and the Kings. I think those 2 teams are obviously the tops for me. And then you got to look at the Central a little closer though, because I mean, it's you're looking a lot. Everyone's looking a lot at Chicago, as you guys mentioned earlier, with Andrew Ladd coming back. I know they picked up a couple other players there at the deadline to kind of beef up their roster, but people forget St. Louis is a really good team, and they're going to start getting healthy. And I think right now no one's really watching them or talking much about them. I think that's a team that could be dangerous come playoff time. But I think anybody that comes out of the first round, which is most likely going to be the softer round, you're going to have either LA or Chicago waiting at your door next.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be tough. I mean, you look at the first round right now. I mean, obviously the Ducks are in first. So, I mean, if they were to hold that, and obviously there's a lot of hockey left, I don't want to assume because, we got to see what happens here. But say that the playoffs did start today. I mean, you're looking at the wild card spot, and you're looking at Nashville, Minnesota. I mean, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at they would play Minnesota, which, again, Minnesota's no slouch either. Eddie and I have talked about this. The Central Division is no joke. They've got Dallas that's playing well too, St. Louis, Chicago, Nashville. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if the Ducks finish first and then play a wild card out of the Central, or do they go in second and maybe play the Sharks, Eddie?
Yeah, I think most of the season we've been expecting the Ducks to have to play the Sharks and have a Pacific Division battle in the first round, and then now with this amazing run and being able to pick up first in the Pacific Division, and now they're aiming for first in the Western Conference. You're looking at one of those bottom Central teams, and yeah, like you said, those still aren't easy opponents. Nashville is a very good team. All it takes for them is Rene to get on a roll. Philip Forsberg's been scoring at will for them right now, which is something they need. And picking up Ryan Johansson was one of the best deals of the year for any team. And then you've got Minnesota as well, and Colorado still creeping around there. And you would expect us to play one of those three teams if we can hold on to this specific division spot right now. And none of them are easy. I mean, like the Central Division has been stacked all year, and it's going to be hard whoever we face.
If you had to pick a team, Patrick, who would you pick that you'd want the Ducks to play in the first round? Not saying that they'd be easy, but maybe it's the team you'd think that would be their best matchup in the first round.
For me, it's easy. I would love to have Minnesota first round. I think that if you're going to draw that up here with a wild card, I would love the Ducks to get another Pacific Division title and go ahead and take on Minnesota there. Or Colorado. Those two teams would be the easier of the teams that they could play. I would not want to play Nashville. I know that they've been kind of up and down, but Pekka Rinne is just – that guy's a giant in net, and all he has to do is get hot. And like Eddie was saying, Philip Forsberg scoring at will, and they really just – they have the depth there now, and I would not want to face them in the first round.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Minnesota and Colorado are the likely choices, and I'd rather have LA and San Jose beat each other up, hopefully in a 7-game series, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, if I could pick, I'd like to play Edmonton in the first round, but I know they're not going to make the playoffs. So, I mean, Minnesota would be ideal. I mean, when it gets hot, then it's pretty much a battling series for 7 games, and Minnesota's no slouch. They I believe they beat St. Louis in the first round last year, and that was a big surprise. So, but I think you never know with Dubnyk. He's kind of streaky. The team itself doesn't have a number one center, and I think that matches up very well for guys like Getzlaf and Kessler. I mean, you shut down one line, and they don't have much else that they can throw at you. So I think that would be the team that you'd want to face in the first round.
Yeah, you talked about the lines there for a little bit. I think that's something going back to this win streak. It's been a key for the Ducks. When they split up Perry and Getzlaf in the beginning, of course there was a lot of questions. What should we do? Then you bring in Perron, you put him with Getzlaf. Now you've got the 3 lines rolling. You've got the Kessler line, the Raquel line, or the Perry line, however you want to call it, and then obviously the Getzlaf line. I mean, how much importance do you think this is going into the playoffs, Patrick, with these 3 lines making it, a defensive nightmare for opposing coaches?
I mean, and not only is the defensive, all these guys could score, and I think one of the best things about the Ducks right now too with that depth is Kessler. I talked about it yesterday. Everyone was really impressed with Raquel's game, but Kessler has the hardest minutes, shutting down the league's top opponents every single night, and he's able to score. Liano's another great guy. I mean, if he had Perry's hands, that kid would have 40 goals a season. It's just awesome for the Ducks to have that center depth, and going into the playoffs, that's key. You want to match up like that, and the Ducks have, as you guys have said all season, I'm sure they have a plethora of centers, and that's just something the Ducks are really strong on right now. And I just see them. I mean, you don't want to play Anaheim in the playoffs, and especially you don't want to play them in the first round. So if they got Minnesota, I'm not too worried about them.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, there's tons of centers. Eddie and I talked about it. We even had Wagner come up yesterday, but then he went back down because Getzlaf ended up playing. I mean, that's just how much depth, Eddie, that the Ducks have at center.
Yeah, and there's a lot of criticism on Kessler. Not so much within the Ducks organization as outside on his contract, and is he really worth it? But I mean, there's not too many centers in the league, and I'm struggling right now to name one that can shut down all-star players better than Ryan Kessler can, and that's what you need. I mean, this team without him is a lot difficult. It's a lot easier to match up against. I mean, you get, because of Ryan Kessler, you get Getzlaf and his line against a better matchup. You get Raquel and Perry against a better matchup, and it benefits the whole team. And without him, this team has a lot different of a makeup.
Yeah, and you made a good point there. I mean, not only is he going against these star guys and stuff, but I mean he's shutting down rookies too. He's taking on McDavid, and he's taking on these guys, and he's taking them out of the mix as well, Patrick.
Yeah, he's had that job all year, and that's just kind of the way his career's gone. Is he's a solid 2-way player. That's what he prides his game on. He's definitely has not performed offensively as high of a clip as he has in the past. But I really think that he's been one of those players for the Ducks that has just grinded all year. He's performed for them all year. And as a Ducks fan, And it's like you were saying, not a lot of criticism has come from within the Ducks organization on that contract. But if you're going to pay to win now, he's the guy that you want to have on your team. He's nasty, but he can score. He plays good defense. He's like, right now, he's probably my favorite player on the Ducks. If I had to pick, that's my guy.
Yeah, and you talk about nasty. How about the game against the Kings? Actually, both games this week, especially last night's game. First period, they go after Perry again, which they did in the other one. And you just see this melee on the ice. I mean, it was so crazy to see Bieksa going at it. Then you had Raquel out of nowhere, who never fights in this entire history. I was talking to some people. They were saying in the minors he never even fought. Then you see him go at it. Versteeg gets introduced to the rivalry of the Ducks and Kings yesterday, and he only gets to see about 2 minutes of ice time. I mean, that was just a crazy first period, Eddie, yesterday.
Yeah, and right now it's really hard to name a better rivalry than the Ducks and Kings. I mean, both teams are Stanley Cup contenders. They play each other hard. Every game is physical, and I mean the Ducks in and night out against any team they create rivalries. I mean, we have to say that game against Arizona was very physical. The game against Montreal, and two teams you wouldn't expect it to be a physical, battling hockey game. That was as well. And the Ducks have a lot of players that get under your skin, and it just comes out even more in games against the Kings. And yeah, I mean Perry in general, and even Raquel getting on the action. Those games are always full of it, and it's something we've just come to expect now.
What was impressive too yesterday is not only did the Ducks win, Patrick, but don't forget Bieksa was out the beginning of the game, so the Ducks had to rotate 5 defensemen for basically 50-something minutes of the game. So I mean, you got to tip your hat off to the Ducks for that. I mean, they had to withstand 6 power plays. Obviously they gave up 2 goals, which isn't terrible, but I mean that's pretty good when you've got to rely on only 5 guys to play almost a full 60 minutes of hockey.
No, absolutely. And I was at first kind of blown away that they got tossed out of the game, but then I remember, if there's already a fight going on, and then you start another fight, those are the guys who get ejected. And
Exactly.
It was beneficial for the Kings at that point because the Ducks lose a top defenseman, and all they lose was it Andreoff? He was the other guy who got the 10 minute, or not the 10 minute, but the game misconduct.
Correct.
So yeah, I mean the Ducks. It just goes to show you though they're working well as a team. They grind through everything through adversity. They got to stay out of the box because eventually that's going to start to hurt them come playoff time to keep taking penalties. But the other teams got to do the same thing too because this power play is running out of clip. I think it was 45%. I want to say something like that.
Yeah, it was like 44.6 or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, so this power play is just shown right now to be unstoppable. Yeah, I'm looking up right now. They are 19 for 42. That's just incredible to me on how good that power play is for the Ducks. But I would love to see them stay out of the box. But you got to love that energy last night too. I know you guys probably like old time hockey like I do, seeing a scrap. And then how about that uppercut on Versteeg there by Raquel?
Oh yeah, I mean that was a nice hit there. I mean he also gave him some jabs in the ribs there too. It looked like, and I don't know if that was what the injury was. I didn't really hear a final say on what happened to Versteeg, but you got to believe it was either his chin, his head, his ribs. I don't know. Raquel basically just went at him. So it had to be something like that. And another thing, we talked about this back in the beginning of the season too. Eddie, you remember this? We talked about the Ducks being the the fighting team. And right now the Ducks are tied with the Blue Jackets in the league for 35 total fights in the season. How about that, Eddie?
They're pretty much doing everything and they can to try and lead in every category in the league right now. They're in the top for face-offs, for penalty kill, for power play, goals against. They're near the top. Obviously, with the bad start of the season, they're still closer to the bottom in goals for per game. I mean, they're starting to catch up, and like you said, fights, and I'm sure penalties taken and penalty minutes. They're close to the top too. So I mean, they're a complete team. They're doing everything they can against every team every night, and you're seeing it on a regular basis now with them winning 11 games in a row.
Let's start the playoffs tomorrow. I'll keep this thing going.
Yeah.
Seriously, we are ready. We are so ready, Patrick. I mean, definitely. I think, the only real concern, you brought it up, Patrick, and I've written about this too, and Eddie and I also talked about this, was the penalty kill. I mean, obviously the penalty kill is still tops in the league. They're still third as of today at 86.2%. But they've had a streak there of giving up a lot of, power play goals. So that's my only real concern with the team right now, Patrick, is the penalty kill, if I had to pick something.
Yeah, and that's just because it gets tighter come playoff time. And when you get a power play chance, you really got to make the most of that in the playoffs. And the Ducks are just going to have to start staying out of the box and not get frustrated if that starts to happen here come playoff time. But right now, I'm ready to go. We can start this tomorrow. I'd be there at Honda Center ready to rock.
I agree. I mean, that's how we feel. We're like, can we just finish this last month now and just fast forward to April? Let's just get this done.
You don't want that momentum to slow. You want to keep this thing moving.
And talking about the momentum, are you concerned about that? Some fans have asked me this last couple of weeks, or mentioned the topic. They go, "Hey, I love how the Ducks are doing. The 11 games in a row. It's this is awesome, and et cetera, et cetera." But some of the fans have said, I'm kind of concerned. Do you think that they're going to slump towards the playoffs? What do you think about that, Patrick?
I think as fans, we look too much into the things like that. I believe that these guys are professionals. They've done this since they were kids. They've been playing in a professional league for years. These coaches know what they're doing. The preparation is going to be there. I think that if we as fans, we look too critical at things like this, thinking, you got to get hot at the right time. Like, that's nice, but I believe these guys know how to win. And they've really turned this season around since December. I don't have a problem with this team. I mean, they're eventually going to lose a game. I mean, unless they go on some ridiculously long streak here. But you just got to look at it that way, that they're a top team playing the best competition there is right now, and they're going right through them. So I don't have a problem with this come playoff time. The Ducks know how to get it done.
What do you think, Eddie? You worried at all if they, go into a slump or they peak too much?
No, I completely agree with Patrick on that. I mean, like you said, these guys know how to win. I mean, they could lose tomorrow, and I don't think it mattered. They'd get right back on their horses, and they'd be ready to go. And I mean, you wouldn't expect them to go into the playoffs. Like, maybe if they go into the playoffs losing 5 games in a row, you'd be a little bit concerned. But I mean, there's no way they go in that they end up having a 29-game win streak come playoff time. So eventually they're going to lose. But like I said, they'll get back on their horses and they'll be ready to go.
You know what I've been impressed about too is not only have the Ducks turned it around on offense, and a lot of it's been, hey, the offense. They've been scoring goals, they've been blowing people out, doing all these other things. But you know what? They've been winning the close games too. I mean, you look at some of these games, the Edmonton last week that they played, and Buffalo last week. You look at Montreal this week; they've had some close games. The Kings games have been, close too, 1 or 2 goals. So. One thing I like, Patrick, is that the Ducks have won the close ones because, as you know, come playoff time, the Ducks aren't going to be beating everybody 4-1, 5-1. They're going to be 3-2, 2-1, those kind of games.
No, it's true. It's nice not to have that league, leading 1-goal game winners. It's nice to know that we can blow teams up too. But you got to win the close ones. You're absolutely right. And come playoff time, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, all those games are usually pretty close, unless there's a huge mismatch or a disparity in power plays. So it's good to see the Ducks are winning the close ones and kind of gear them up and get them ready for the playoffs. But, I mean, I just can't say enough good things. Thank God this is a Ducks podcast because, man, we sound like homers, but it's hard not to when the Ducks are playing this well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'll tell you, Eddie and I were probably like you. We were struggling in the beginning as far as, the responses we were getting because, obviously the franchise worst start going back to the 96-97 season when they also started 1-7-2. And after that, we were like, oh, man, are we going to still have a podcast at the end of the season? It's continuing. And we were like, oh, man, I hope they turn around because Eddie can attest to this. It was rough sledding. I would say October through probably mid-November, Eddie.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's been rough all season. But we mentioned this way back, I think, as early as November when they were still struggling. I mean, they were playing playoff hockey. They just weren't scoring goals. They were playing great defense. Boudreau changed the style around, and that's how you have to win games, and that's how you win cups. If you look at, I believe over the last 5 years, the teams that have won the cup have been at least 1, 2, or 3 in goals against per game, and we're up there now. And I think this is the first time in a while the Ducks have been so good defensively. The offense is eventually going to come. We have the guys. The team knew that. Getzlaf, Perry, Kessler, Raquel, these guys are eventually going to start putting up points. And if you commit to this defensive style, it's how you win games.
Yeah, it's every sport, football, baseball, basketball, whatever, hockey. I mean, defense wins. And, another big thing, and this has been a topic all season long, has been the goalie situation, with Gibson and Anderson. What do you think, Patrick, going into the playoffs? I went to the Ducks Diehards party, and Boudreau was talking about the goalies, and he basically said he was going to rotate both and then, make a decision closer to the playoffs. What do you think? You agree with that? You've got to have a guy going into the playoffs that's going to be the number one. What do you feel?
It's nice to think that you have Martin Brodeur starting, as we talked before the podcast, that every night he's going to give you that kind of goaltending. But I mean, that's just not the NHL anymore. You got to have two guys that are capable. I mean, yeah, you could have a 1A who's going to play most of your games. You're going to rely on him for the net. I mean, at this point with the Ducks, I mean, Freddie and Gibby are both playing out of their mind right now, and it's hard to pick as which one's going to be starting. I believe he's going to go with the hot hand, which as he should. But look at the situation right now in New Jersey. Corey Schneider got hurt, and they got Thomas Kincaid in net. If that was a playoff team, if that was a long-term injury, what are you going to do? Or look at the situation in Montreal. You really have to consider, if the Ducks were to trade Frederik Andersen, is Anton Khudobin going to help the Ducks win a cup if Gibby goes down? Probably not. So I just think the Ducks need to keep all these guys going, which they did. They didn't make any rash moves at the deadline, and I think this is the chance for the Ducks to win now. And I love the two goaltender situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. Your thoughts on that, Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, right now this would have to be probably the best goalie tandem in the league. I mean, Freddie and Gibson are both in the top 10 for goals against average and in the top 20 in save percentage. And I mean, it's hard to look across the league and say there's any two better goalie tandem in the league. And yeah, I mean, you look at some of the guys who do start 60 games. I mean, Ben Bishop is going to probably start 60 games for Tampa this year. And I mean, they are doing better now. And Schneider is probably going to start the most games. He's played 55 games. And if any of those guys go down with injuries, I mean, you could look at Washington too. If Holtby goes down, I mean, then you're done for the season. I mean, a good example of that this year is Montreal and Carey Price. I mean, when they had him at the beginning of the season, they were unstoppable. They started out so well. They lost him, and they were still doing okay because Condon stepped up and was riding the hype for a bit there. And now look where they are without him. I mean, they're most likely going to miss the playoffs. And being able to have two guys in case one goes down, because I mean, the chances of both going down is slim to none. So I think it's really important to have two top quality goalies.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean we talked about this too before. Is okay if you deal Anderson, around trade deadline time. We had talked about scenarios about this, and Patrick, you probably agree too. We said, hey, if you're going to send out Anderson, then you better get somebody else and another goalie back, someone that's going to be a quality backup if you're going to roll with Gibson all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely would have to do something like that. I mean, as we just talked about, I mean, you can't rely on Khudobin. I mean, I'm sure he's a great guy, but he's not the guy you want to rely on come Stanley Cup playoff time. I think the biggest issue, too, I know we've already talked about it, so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the RFA situation this summer coming up, and they got to open the purse strings here eventually and start paying these guys. That's going to be the real question here. I mean, if you're going to move Frederik Andersen or you're going to make a team-changing decision, we're going to have to look at the draft. And that's going to be the focal point here, I think, coming up this summer once we get to the playoffs, hopefully with the Stanley Cup ring here coming in Anaheim. Then we can look at who we're going to re-sign, and if not, I believe that's where Freddie's going to move. Because honestly, guys, I'd love to keep him, but if he's going to command $4 to $5 million, that's a lot. You're going to have $8 million plus locked up in goaltending.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be tough, and I mean, I think Eddie will agree too. We talked about this. It really looks like Lindholm and Raquel would be your two primary guys to go after. Then you'd have to figure out with Vatanen and Anderson, and it's going to be a tough situation. I mean, you'd like to keep all four, of course, but Eddie, realistically, I think maybe they only keep 2 out of 4. If we're lucky, maybe 3.
Yeah, and as much as it is, the cap hit as well, it's term, and I believe Gibson is signed for 2 more seasons after this at 2.3, and if Freddie wants 4 or 5, you can guarantee that he wants 4 or 5 for more than 2 years. And you're going to have to look at signing Gibson for close to, if not more than that, depending on how well he's playing in the future for more than what Freddie's getting. So, Raquel and Lindholm, those are our future guys. I think those are the guys you have to sign right now. I believe we have the depth to trade a guy like Vatanen. I mean, Theodore, we would all hope and expect to be in the NHL next year. Then Montour can come up and take the position that Theodore is playing this year, where he has brief appearances for injuries. He can come up, he can play in the power play, play some softer minutes than you would if he was a full-time guy. And maybe we don't really feel the impact of losing a guy like Vatanen. I mean, we'll all have to wait and see in the future. But then it comes down to signing a guy like Freddie, and you have to decide, who will you benefit from having? Will you benefit from having a guy like David Perron and signing him for a longer term, or will you benefit from having two starting goalies?
Yeah, I agree, and that's an interesting situation, Patrick. We talked about this too before the show. If you keep Raquel and Lindholm, then what do? I mean, you've got some UFAs on this team. Stewart, Santorelli, Garbett, Perron. I mean, maybe you try to keep 2 or 3 of those guys instead of locking up so much money into Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, I'm not sure Anderson's going to be here post draft, but I think that if you're going to open the wallet there, you got to pay Lindholm and you got to pay Raquel. Those are 2 really good young players. Raquel has got permanent top 6 winger written all over him, and Lindholm, I mean, he's really, really something special here in Anaheim, and it would just be really a bad decision for the management team to get rid of him and decide to go over Vatanen instead. I mean, as much as I love Sammy, I agree with you guys wholeheartedly there on Lindholm. But when it comes to the UFAs, you're looking at a couple of people there too, and then we'll kind of see how Jamie McGinn works out. I know he's a UFA after the season, I believe. But David Perron's the guy. That's the guy you got to re-sign. He's still under 30, and he's performing really well for Anaheim, and I think he's really pushing hard here for another contract. So we'll see how it goes there. But he's my guy if you're going to open it up.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you. I mean, the way Perron's played has just been ridiculous, especially with being able to not only play with Getzlaf, but now you separate Perry and Getzlaf and give more of a balanced attack, Eddie.
Yeah, and just a quick thing too on Vatanen and Anderson. I mean, their value right now is probably at the highest it's ever been, and you have them, locked in as RFAs, so you're able to move them at the draft, which is a luxury that a lot of teams don't have. And if you sign them, I mean, eventually they'll be UFAs, and it might be a little bit harder to deal them. So I think being able to, trade these guys possibly to move up in the draft or for some prospects to replenish the forward pool and get some guys in for the future. Because, I mean, Getzlaf and Perry and Kessler are going to be 31 starting next year. So you're going to have to start, looking to the future and replacing those guys. So I think, moving these guys out when we have the depth and the ability to and bringing them some prospects is never going to hurt.
Yeah, and speaking about all the different players, Getzlaf, Perry, Kessler, and whatnot, we have the shifting gears here. We have the World Cup coming up, and several of these players have been named to it. We had Getzlaf with Team Canada, Kessler with Team USA, Vatanen Team Finland, Anderson with Team Europe, and then Gibson with Team North America. What are your thoughts on that, Patrick? I mean, we got 5 guys in there. Some people were upset that some other players weren't in there, but obviously some of the rosters are still going to be filled. But what do you think so far?
Oh, I got to ask you guys real quick too about that. How about those jerseys for North America? I'm digging those black jerseys. All those young kids wearing the black jerseys. They're the underdogs. That I'm buying a Gibson jersey with that. That's like my favorite out the gate. But no. I think it's great. I think the World Cup's going to be awesome. I'm glad to see the Ducks players nominated for it. I think Perry's going to have, a little bit of pride there. He's going to work hard. Yeah, they've got some more roster spots open, so I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make it.
What do you think, Eddie? There's still Fowler out there, Raquel, Lindholm as well. What do you think as far as them making it?
I definitely think Perry's a lock to make it. I mean, you look at the 2 big names that didn't get put on that initial roster, and it's Giroux and Perry. And Perry was in Sochi, Giroux wasn't. I think Perry, just even for the chemistry he has with Getzlaf and the way he's been playing this season, and in his past with the Olympic team, and he's played on Team Canada with Mike Babcock before. I'm sure that they'll add him in the next roster spot, but. It gets a little bit tougher from there. I mean, Raquel's having a great season. Fowler as well, who could still make the blue line for the USA. It's tough. I mean, it's going to be a very good Swedish team. They have a lot of depth at forward. There's a lot of guys performing at a higher level than Raquel, and that's not to say anything bad towards Raquel, but there's guys like Philip Forsberg out there too, the Sedins who have a lot of history with the team. I mean, there's a lot of players out there that could beat him out, but it would be nice to see him get on there. And for Fowler on the blue line for the U.S., there's a couple of young guys moving up there too. You never know. Over 23, obviously, with Team North America, but it's going to be tough for him to make that team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they talked about that. It is going to be tough, and this is going to take place in the preseason. before the NHL regular season. What are your thoughts on that, Patrick? Because this always comes up, being injured and how it affects the NHL season. What do you think as far as the team playing, in the fall there before the regular season gets started?
I think that it's a scary situation if you're any NHL general manager here, looking at the beginning of the season with all your top stars going to be gone playing in this World Cup. If someone were to get injured, that is obviously not going to bode well. I got to wonder what it's going to be like in Canada, though. I see Carey Price here is on the Canadian team. If he is shut down in Montreal right now and then gets a start here in the World Cup and gets re-injured, I got to believe that there's going to be some rough situations up there in Canada. I don't know. It makes me nervous as a Ducks fan too. But anytime you want to offer me more hockey, I'm going to tune in and watch it. It's going to be great hockey too. So it's hard to look away as a fan. But as a GM, I'd be biting my fingers off.
I think I agree with you on both ends of that. I mean, it's definitely going to be more fun to watch. But yeah, if you're a GM, you're going to want everything to work out and have your full roster come the NHL season. One other little bit of news that came up this week in the NHL was Jágr tying Gordie Howe, third all-time in points, Eddie. And, it looks like we'll see how he goes. But, I mean, this guy, he's on Florida. I mean, he keeps on going at 44 years of age. And, I mean, an amazing season, too, for Florida.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an amazing feat, and it doesn't seem like, at least to me, that there's enough respect and coverage on the feat that this is. I mean, a lot of people look at it from the outside saying, well, he's 44, he's been in the league for so long. Of course, he's going to eventually, break some of these records. But, if you look at the games played, he's actually played less games than Gordie Howe and Mark Messier, and he's gotten to this feat, obviously quicker than they have. And I mean, he's going to go down as a top 20 player. You look at points per game, he's sitting at 18th, so he is one of the top 20 goal scorers of all time. So I mean, it's an amazing feat, and if he wants to come back next year, he has a shot at Mark Messier. I mean, he's 37 points away, so he's definitely not going to get it this year, but there's a chance that by the time his career is done, he finishes second only behind Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, and Patrick, what do you think? Do you think Jágr would come back next season? Maybe try and get up there and get second, or do you think maybe this year might be the last year?
I hope he plays until he's 80. I love the mullet. I'd love to see the gray mullet out on the ice there scoring goals. Seriously, this guy's great to watch. He's a legend of the game. I would love for him to ride out for the sunset in a Anaheim jersey if I could. That'd be awesome. But the feat he's accomplished here, I mean, I know it's been beaten to death all across the league, but imagine what he would have had he not gone to the KHL. How much closer he would already be over 800 goals. He'd be second all time in goal scoring. There would be a possibility of him maybe catching Gretzky there for 894. You can't say enough about that guy, and he's probably going to play a few more seasons, I imagine. And how about that Florida team? Everyone's been waiting for them to fall off the top of the standings. They haven't done it. You got to put a lot of credit there on that team, and he's part of that leadership group there with all those young guys. So I'm happy for him. I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, that Florida team, Eddie and I talked about that too. I mean, we've talked about Washington and how great they've been all season, but I mean, you can't overlook Florida. I mean, that team's been on a roll too, Eddie, and that may factor in too if Jágr and the Florida Panthers, go all the way. I mean, they have a really good shot at it. I mean, obviously they're battling it out with Tampa Bay, but they have a good chance. You can't, overlook them as well for the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a good goaltender in Luongo. Obviously, he might even be up for some Vezina nominations this year, and a very young core, which is getting better every game. I mean, they've struggled a bit, and they've kind of been victims to the fact that Tampa Bay's been playing so well, and they've won 9 in a row now, so they've fallen off the Atlantic Division lead. But that doesn't mean that their season's lost. They will most likely make the playoffs, and I think, yeah, that definitely factors into if Jágr will come back. I'm sure the chance to catch Messier is right in the back of his mind, as well as possibly a chance at a cup this year and next year if he stays with the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, and we're just gonna have to keep our eye. I mean, there's some good races going on in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, the key one in the Pacific Division that we're following, and we'll keep you updated. We'll be back next week with a regular podcast. I do want to thank Patrick for coming on our show. Check him out on the Puck Guys That's their name on Twitter. They're also on thepuckguys.com. Thanks for coming on, Patrick. We always like to have guests and work with other people, in the hockey world.
Oh, you guys are great. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. And like I said, we'll be back next week, and let's go Ducks.